Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Malcolm Maestrel and I'm a Membership Services Coordinator with IAAP. Thank you for joining us for today's subject matter expert webinar, How to Produce a Live Streaming Event that is accessible, green, and open source. We're very excited to have Vijay Mathew with us for today's presentation. But before we begin, we have a few general housekeeping items to go over. Closed captioning is provided. To enable closed captioning, select the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and the stream text links for English, French, German, Spanish, and Swedish will be posted in the chat as well. American Sign Language interpretation is also provided. Microphones are muted to prevent any background noise or disruptions, and we ask that all attendees please post your questions in the Q&A, and questions will be saved until the end of the presentation. The chat will be monitored for general dialogue and technical issues, and today's webinar will be recorded and available in our webinar archives, and we will send out a copy of the recording and presentation to everyone who registered. And now I would like to turn today's program over to our presenter, Vijay Mathew.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Vijay Mathew. My pronouns are he, him, and I will be leading today's webinar on how to produce a live streaming event that is accessible, green, and open source. My visual description is that I have brown skin and short black hair with a little bit of white on the sides. I'm wearing glasses with clear plastic frames, a black shirt, and I'm standing in front of a white wall. The structure of this 1-hour webinar is as follows. I will present for 30 minutes, and then we'll have a live demonstration, and then we'll make time for Q&A at the end. And we will send you a summary document of what was covered in this webinar with links to resources for any links that I mentioned in the presentation. And I would like to thank my colleague, Erin Robbins at Emerson College, who is the new accessible design specialist, for her valuable feedback in developing this presentation. And I would like to thank IAAP for the opportunity to share this work. Visual description, a screen capture of an essay from the HowlRound.com website. The title of the essay is, "We Can't Build an Equitable Theater While Ignoring COVID." I'm the co-founder and cultural strategist for HowlRound Theater Commons, which is based at Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts. We were founded in 2011 and are funded by charitable donations. The core of HowlRound Theater Commons is to give theater artists and theater organizations worldwide an infrastructure to amplify their ideas and conversations to a community of other theater practitioners. We do this via internet publishing platforms like an online journal and a live stream channel. All the content you see on HowlRound.com is authored and produced by theater professionals who are interested in social change through the performing arts. The staff's role at HowlRound Theater Commons is to support and steward the field's ideas and conversations by providing copy editing and technical support, as well as promotional and communications support. In addition to an online platform, we also support field-wide gatherings and convenings. My specific experience in live streaming has been as an online platform producer or designer, and as a trainer for theater organizations to develop their capacity to live stream. As some of our organization's values are inclusion and equity, practicing accessibility, building community, and promoting ecological awareness have been some of the core features of our day-to-day work. What is live streaming? For this webinar, I will define live streaming as sending real-time video and audio to a live video player on the web. which means the audience can watch the live program by simply clicking a play button. You might be familiar with live streaming through services such as Facebook Live, YouTube Live. These are known as RTMP destinations. We will discuss what RTMP is and how to use it later in this webinar. Typically, live streaming involves broadcasting an in-person event over the internet, similar to a live television broadcast, but on the web. It can also involve broadcasting a video conference to the web. In both cases, audiences click play on a video player to watch the live event. A broader definition of live streaming includes video conferencing, video chats, mobile video chats, virtual events. There's a significant overlap between practices used in video conferencing and live streaming. Design equals values. I want to make the case here that design equals values because how you design your event, whether or not you consciously think about it, expresses your beliefs, your priorities, and your values. Design expresses power, and that's your power to include or exclude, and your power to acknowledge and to do something about the potential hidden ecological and human costs of your activity. This slide lists 5 accessibility features. 1, live captions. 2, sign language interpretation. 3, visual descriptions. 4, monitor your rate of speech. 5, asking for access needs. I want to now cover what I think are the 5 main accessibility features or practices that every live stream event should have. This is not a comprehensive list, but is a good starting point for when you plan your own digital events. And as we are all accessibility professionals here, I would also love to hear your perspectives later on during the Q&A portion of this webinar. On this slide is a closed caption symbol, and underneath it, it says live captions available. The closed caption symbol is 2 white letter C's on a black background. I am not displaying a symbol for live professional captions, otherwise known as real-time captions or CART services, because I don't think there is a symbol for it, but please correct me if I'm wrong later on in the Q&A. Real-time human written captions is arguably the most important accessibility feature for your live streams, in that it serves many different access needs. A live caption service provider that HowlRound uses is National Captioning Institute. I especially like their application for displaying captions in a web page and for embedding captions as an iframe on a web page. In the Zoom chat, I am going to add a link to a demo of software that they Hi, I believe I lost you all, but I will join. And let me know, Malcolm, if I should continue.
Yep, you're back now. We can pick up from where we left off.
Okay, one moment, please. Okay, so in the Zoom chat, I will share a demo of the captions software that National Captioning Institute provides, and on this in this webinar, it's Captions First, who is the live captions provider, another really great company to be aware of. Displaying captions underneath a live player and simultaneously projected in your venue is quite straightforward when using a service provider who's providing live human captions. And to review what we all probably know, a good practice is to send your captioners any helpful preparation material ahead of time, such as scripts or run of show documents that can help the captioners do a good job of providing accurate captions. And here's a screen capture of a video player embedded on the HowlRound website. And below the live video player are live captions embedded there. So you could see both the video and the captions operating at the same time. Later on, I'll show you this setup on an actual web page. Now onto our second accessibility feature, visual description. This slide shows the symbol for sign language interpretation. It is a black and white icon of two hands close together, forming a circle between the index finger and the thumb. The right hand's fingers are facing up and the left hand's fingers are facing down. The second accessibility feature that is essential is sign language interpretation. One service provider that HowlRound uses within the United States context is Pro Bono ASL, which is an agency that specializes in culturally specific and culturally competent sign language interpreters. As we as an organization are frequently supporting events by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, Pro Bono ASL is able to find us interpreters with this specific cultural expertise. And in the Zoom chat, I'm going to share with you all a link to Pro Bono ASL. And here, the interpreters you see here, the agency they are working with are Captions First, another excellent agency to be aware of. And like live captions, it's also good practice to send preparation material ahead of time to the sign language interpreters, such as scripts, event descriptions, and run of show documents. On the next slide here that I have is a video still image of a group of people sitting in a circle listening to a woman in the center of the circle speaking into a microphone. On the right side of the image is a sign language interpreter in front of a blue background in their own rectangle layered on top of the main video. This is what is called a picture-in-picture effect and is often used in video content that features sign language interpretation. I'm sharing the term picture-in-picture because that's a difficult word to say out loud. And just to be clear, I'm writing out the spelling there, picture-in-picture effect. We are going to make a picture-in-picture effect together using the open source software called VDO Ninja in combination with OBS Studio later on. I will put that in the chat again, another difficult word, and I will show that word on screen later on. Visual description. This slide features a black and white symbol for audio description, which is the letters A and D inside the outline of a television monitor. In the context of live streaming, visual description can be as simple as having your participants announce their names each time they speak and describe any relevant visual information that is being shared. Like the closed captions symbol, I don't think we have a symbol for visual description. But if there is one, please share that with us later on in the Q&A. This next slide says fast talking in italics, but the words are crossed out as in try not to talk fast. In this fourth accessibility practice, I have been trying to keep my rate of speech at a rate that is comfortable for the listeners, the sign language interpreter, and the live caption writers. I have probably been going a little too fast. This is essential for better quality sign language interpretation and for better quality live captions. Additionally, it may be helpful for your audience who is listening to you as well. Slowing your pace of speech creates more universal accessibility. And in general, you'll want to speak at 120 to 140 words per minute. But the speed of speech also depends on your particular context and your audience. The next slide says, what are your access needs? This accessibility practice depends on your context and generally would be about you as a producer asking your community in some kind of way, what are your access needs? And then working to design for those needs. Asking this question is probably done very much in advance of your event so that there's enough time and care given to folks who are requesting specific access considerations. To review again, here are the 5 accessibility features and practices that should be considered for any of your live stream events. Live captions, sign language interpretation, visual descriptions, slower rate of speech, asking and accommodating access needs. Now, I'd like to move on to briefly talk about sustainability. This is a photograph of large black cabinets of computer servers aligned in rows in a clean room with white floors and a white ceiling. I want to argue that there's no such thing as ecological sustainability when it comes to live streaming and to the internet in general. There is only harm reduction. There are significant costs to the internet and live streaming that are hidden. And if we reveal them and face them, they put us into an ethical predicament. One of the many hidden costs of live streaming and digital products and services is this. This is a picture of 2 children in a mineral mine in Africa sifting through orange dirt with pans and shovels. This is just one example of the hidden costs of our current unsustainable activity. In this case, it is the human cost of forced labor and of economic inequality between countries in the global north and countries in the global south. I'm now back on the picture of that clean computer server room that we just saw before. After this set of computers and the millions and millions of other computers like this live out its lifespan of 6 months, 3 years, or 5 years at the most, we move on to trash them. This is a close-up photograph of broken and dirty electronic waste. It is disorganized. It is a disorganized array of circuit boards and computer debris. At the end of our digital tools life cycles, we have another set of humans, also in parts of the world that don't have access to the overabundance of cheap energy that we have, and who pick through the minerals that the first set of kids we saw earlier were mining from the dirt. This is a photograph of a mother and her toddler in South Asia sorting through a mound of toxic electronic waste. This is a photograph of a half-open laptop within which are green sprouts and grasses emerging from dark soil where you'd normally see a keyboard. In addition to the human and economic injustice we just saw, the internet and live streaming as it currently exists and as it's currently growing is incompatible with limiting global heating to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And therefore, it's incompatible with sustaining our modern, high energy, high resource consumption ways of life. In this slide, I have the words sustainability and green struck out. And I summarize with 2 bullet points what I'm about to say now. Sustainability and green are problematic concepts and should be examined if we wish to support human rights and social justice. The mainstream idea of sustainability still has sacrifice zones, people, places, and non-human beings that we're willing to sacrifice and who are mostly located in the global south or are marginalized people in our global north. Mainstream sustainability lacks an understanding of justice and is unable to accept that drastic change in consumption and production patterns is necessary for all of us, necessary for our collective survival. In a study conducted by degrowth researcher Jason Hickel, published in the Nature journal, the conclusion was that we in the high energy, high consumption countries of the US, the UK, and the European Union need to reduce our consumption and production of all resources and products and services by 75% in order to live within planetary boundaries, which means to live within our fair share of the resources that are available to all of us. In other words, if we are currently producing 100 minutes of video content, we should on average try to instead produce or consume 25 minutes instead. That's a 75% reduction. Or if we work 5 days a week, we should be working 1 day a week in our current context. Given that the internet is now so embedded in many of our lives, what do we do with this predicament? My personal response is that I believe that we need to prioritize the use of the internet in order to meet the needs of people with disabilities, and that we simultaneously need to practice restraint and self-limitation. Placing a limit on production and consumption while prioritizing the needs of the most marginalized is social justice, climate justice, and disability justice. On this slide, I have written, let's prioritize access while practicing sufficiency and restraint. And I have summarized in bullet points what I'm about to say. Here are some concrete actions we can take. Video is by far the most data-intensive activity we do on the web. The size of the data we send and receive is directly related to the amount of electricity that is being used, and in turn, the amount of carbon emissions used to produce that electricity. Audio is much less heavy in terms of data and size. And then images, and then text. Text is the lightest medium on the web. In a typical video conference, 96% of the carbon footprint of a video call is produced by the video. So one suggestion is to make turning on video an exception rather than the rule for video conferencing. A good static image for your profile picture can be an effective replacement for constant streaming of the video. The exception, of course, to this guideline that I just stated is that when the visual is essential to the communication, such as when you are collaborating with deaf people or have sign language interpreters. With video, you can generally achieve good quality at a smaller resolution, a smaller image size, while using a lot less electricity and reducing carbon emissions. This is going counter our consumer culture, which defines progress as providing you with larger and larger resolutions, HD, Ultra HD, 4K, 8K, and on and on. These resolutions really don't matter and are just wasteful and inaccessible for people with slow internet, especially if your audience is looking at your work on a laptop or even just a small mobile phone screen. Organizing an in-person watch party is also a great way to save on the technical resources, as you just need one computer for an audience. This practice of sharing resources and infrastructure within a community of people is something that we have to get back to if we are thinking that we need to degrow and enter into a degrowth paradigm. Not everything needs to be on video, and we should treat it as a precious resource that it is. And now let's transition on to free Libre open source software. This slide shows 4 logos of software projects: OBS Studio, PeerTube, VDO.Ninja, and Jitsi Meet. These are software for the commons, otherwise known as free Libre open source software. This is non-commercial software that is open to co-creation by a community of volunteers. The original impulse or spirit behind the creation of these projects is to meet people's needs outside of the goal to make profit. Many open source software projects are commons, meaning they're part of the gift and solidarity economies, made by volunteers as a service or contribution to society. These projects are community-driven, and they operate outside of the traditional market-based software that you often pay for either with money or your own personal data. Big tech corporations like Meta, Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft make things free in exchange for your privacy and your private data. Commons-based software, on the other hand, makes things free because they want to make the world a better place. Commercial software actually has geopolitics. Zoom, for example, is a US corporation and therefore is subject to enacting trade embargoes. People in Cuba, Syria, Iran, and some parts of the Ukraine that are Russian occupied can't get on Zoom. Jitsi Meet is a great alternative to Zoom. At my organization, HowlRound Theater Commons, we use Jitsi Meet many times for video conferences with theater artists who are based in Cuba and who weren't allowed to use Zoom. Open source software is not subject to these restrictions and embargoes as they're not considered commodities or products. Some of the benefits is that some of the other benefits is that open source software is less expensive. It's free from surveillance capitalism and privacy violations, and is oftentimes designed for energy efficiency and longevity. OBS Studio is software that you use to compose a final video and audio program and then broadcast it to a live stream destination. I'm going to share a link to the OBS Studio project site, and in just a moment, we are going to look at it together. PeerTube is a live stream destination and video host. It is an alternative to YouTube and to Facebook and to Twitch and other places that are live stream destinations. It is software that you install on a server that you control, or it's software that you can join hundreds of publicly available servers, otherwise known as instances. I'm going to put a link in the Zoom chat here that's going to list free and public servers or instances of PeerTube that you're allowed to join and live stream to. And this fourth software I want to talk about is called VDO.Ninja, otherwise known as Video Ninja. It's a tool to bring in remote participants into broadcasting software like OBS Studio. It can also be used as video conferencing software like Jitsi Meet, an alternative to Zoom. You can add your camera, desktop, or phone to Video Ninja and then use it as a source to compose a final video program. I'm going to put a link to that as well in the Zoom chat now. And then Jitsi Meet is a well-featured video conferencing software. It is software that you host on on a server that you control, or that instance that you join, just like PeerTube. And there are many public instances available, and the organization behind the creation hosts a publicly available instance, and we will see other instances as well that we'll join. And I put a link to that in the Zoom chat just now. Okay, so I want to conclude this part of the presentation of the webinar by saying that we know that most of our activity is incompatible with 1.5 degrees Celsius and a livable and just future for all beings. Our current ways of living are unsustainable, and we also know that there are no easy solutions to this predicament, but only values-informed responses. This is what I suggest. Number one, we prioritize disability justice and prioritize creating equity for those who are marginalized. In a crisis, which seems to be an era that we are entering in more and more, we need to prioritize equity as the first thing that comes to mind. And number two, we get conscious of our overproduction and overconsumption and start to treat everything like the precious resources and finite resources that they are. There's no such thing as unlimited on a finite planet. And number three, we form groups and create communities like this to meet and discuss our creative responses to the predicament that we find ourselves in. Thank you. And so I'm just displaying my email address here, and I'll also put it in the chat. I'm happy to get in conversation with you and meet you. So now we're going to move on to the demo portion of this webinar. And so first I will quickly show you, I will stop the share, and I will quickly show you the very basic, most basic equipment you would need for an in-person live stream. So here I have a video camera. It's a simple professional video camera. And what makes it a professional video camera is that it has these XLR audio inputs, meaning you can get high quality audio into the camera and into your live stream by using external microphones and an audio mixing board. And then the next piece of equipment in the most minimal setup is a thing called a video capture card or video capture device. And what this is basically connects from your video camera into this piece of hardware and then into your laptop or computer that's connected to the internet. And that's the workflow. A video capture device, simply put, transforms your video camera into a webcam that can then send video and audio through the internet. Here's an inexpensive video capture card or video capture device that is probably $20 US that can be found online. And this connects from your video camera and into your computer through USB, from HDMI to USB. Again, this just transforms your video camera into something like a webcam that can be picked up by a software such as OBS Studio, or it could be picked up by a video conference software such as Jitsi Meet or Zoom, etc. So that's the very basic hardware. And now what I'm going to do is show you a live stream destination on PeerTube. So I'm going to share my screen again here. So HowlRound Theater Commons has is hosting its own instance of PeerTube, but as I mentioned in the chat and before, you can join your own instance and practice and actually use it for your own events. So here I'm going to log in, and what we're going to do is make a live stream destination, otherwise known as an RTMP destination. And I'm typing that in the chat so you see the spelling of that. So I'm going to click publish here, and I'm going to make what's called a permanent or live recurring live stream so I can broadcast to this live video player several times. And I'll put a little teaser image in the live video player. And so here we have made the live stream destination, and you see on the right side is a live chat, web chat, and I will also share this destination in the Zoom chat so you can look at it yourself. And then what we're going to do is get the information we need in order to broadcast to this live video player. And what we do here is, what we see here is what's called a live RTMP URL. And what I'm going to do is, what I've done is I've moved OBS Studio into the sharing so you can see what I'm doing. I've launched OBS Studio, which is desktop software that you run. And we will put this live RTMP destination in OBS Studio. And I'm copying what's called the live stream key, which is instructions on specifically where to send the live stream. Okay, and for the moment, you see that in my OBS Studio, we have just a blank screen here. So I can add what's called sources, and you can add many things. You can add, and you can see this here, a whole list of things like video sources, media sources, still images, colors, even websites to compose your final program. And so what I'm going to do here is I have a video file of an animation movie that I'm going to search on my computer and load it up into my program screen. And in here, I'm going to start streaming. And then about 20 to 30 seconds later, this will be broadcasted to that destination that I just shared in the chat. And as we're waiting for that 20 to 30 seconds, I'm going to get Malcolm and Rachel to try to join me using Video Ninja. So I'm going to go back here, and Rachel and Malcolm, if you could just join Video Ninja at this link, either on your phone or desktop, and then we will add you to my OBS Studio composition.
This is Malcolm. Should be all set.
Thank you. Yes, and I see you, Malcolm, there. And if you could mute your audio, just in case, and I see Rachel there, thank you. So I'm in the what's called the control room of Video Ninja, and I will copy Rachel's video source, her video feed, and I will add that to this composition here by clicking on browser source. Let's try Malcolm's. As a browser source. Okay, so here is, earlier we talked about a picture-in-picture effect. And this is basically that. You can bring in, this is showing that you can have various sources that populate your a video program, and then arrange it how you'd like. And you can actually have different scenes in OBS Studio and switch between the scenes. So for example, I can make a new scene where what I'm going to do is add a video camera as a source. And I have one already connected to my computer here. And here it is. And so I could switch from this scene to then this scene. And then I could switch back. And then I could switch to, for example, a new scene I make, which maybe is just a static image. Great. And now I'll show you, we should be live streaming by now. And let's see if we are. So I see that the play button is now visible on this live stream destination. And yes, and I see us live about from 20 seconds ago. And if you've pulled this up on your own web browser, you're probably seeing the same thing. Now, what I can show you is one way of displaying both web chat captions and your live video player on a web page. So here I've mocked up a web chat and I'm sorry, a web page. And what I'll do is, actually, this is what you see here is a video player from another event I was just testing with. And so what we'll do here is I will take I will edit this web page and show you what embedding this video player would be like. So I'm going to go to clicking on share, embed. I'm going to copy the embed code. It's HTML code. And I will put that into this web page here. I'll click save here, and then I'll just refresh my page and see what happens. Yeah, and there we are. We have the live stream happening, the live video player, and we also have the embedded chat, and then a web chat that belongs to that that live stream. And if you're interested in just seeing what I did here, I will actually share the HTML file with you in the Zoom chat. There you go. And so you can pull this up yourself. I'd recommend if you can just mute the audio. in order to prevent any extra audio. Okay, and I'll stop the share there for a moment. And thank you, Malcolm and Rachel, for that. And we're at 11:45, so I want to open us up for questions. One thing that we didn't get to do was just show you Jitsi Meet and how you can actually live stream from Jitsi Meet. And by putting in an RTMP destination into it to then broadcast your video conference to a live video player like what you just saw. Okay, so Malcolm, you want to help me with the questions?
Happy to. This is Malcolm. So we've got some comments in the chat. Saying the demonstration was amazing and it's been a great presentation. So once again, I want to thank you, Vijay. And we had another comment in the Q&A saying that there actually is a cart symbol. It's a projector outline with cart in the center.
Oh, great.
And I'm unfamiliar with that symbol, but I'll definitely have to look it up
If anyone has
afterward.
the link to that, it would be great to share if possible. I would love to see that.
Yeah. And then we have another attendee asking about the 5 accessibility features you shared. Can we consider these 5 accessibility features for accessible PowerPoints also?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think that's also a question for the amazing group of people gathered here as well. But just as general principles, I think those 5 would make sense. Yeah.
And then we had another question in the chat. Do you know if there is a good app that can help monitor the rate of speech, like a widget on the desktop?
No, I don't know of one. Just with really rough math, just if you have a script and you were to count the words and divide that, you could figure out approximately how long it would take for you to say all of those words. But I don't know of a particular app that can count.
And
But if there's someone who does know, please do share.
yeah, we had someone add to the previous question they shared. In a PowerPoint, they'd also focus on colors, fonts, and meaningful links. And then the next question is saying, this may be silly, but if we already own the devices, how does reducing our use impact sustainability? I think I missed a key element of the presentation.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I think it was in reference to the slide where you were talking about not using video if it's needed, and how that video data is takes up a lot more resources than audio. So I think they were saying, if I already have the device, how does not using video reduce our impact?
Well, I think, yeah, still I'm maybe not fully understanding the question, but just like just in this very call, or let me share, I'll make something a little more concrete. I can share a little tool here that may help to answer this question. So in the chat, I am putting a link to a website which is called Arts Carbon. Oh, right. Yes. Darlene Shaw, I see your comment there. Not using video decreases data transmission thereby decreasing the use of electricity. Yeah, absolutely correct. Yes. And so maybe that answers the question.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's the direction they were going in.
right. Yes. So for example, if we were all video off, we'd be significantly sending over, transmitting a significantly less data, and that's significantly less electricity. And most energy production or electricity production um, is polluting, is creating carbon emissions, depending on, especially us in the US, but that's generally around the world, that's the case as well.
Thank you. And is there a way to embed a third-party cart captioning company's captions into this live stream system? Also, is there any time delay with the captions?
There's a, so like I showed, we're able to embed, um, for example, we caption first, they're working with the software called Stream Text, right? And then we just basically coded that up and then embedded that into a web page. And I think maybe your question means having the captions actually appear over the video. That's quite possible. And we could do that through OBS Studio, where you could just bring that in as a, for example, that stream text page of captions into OBS Studio and layer it over the video. So it's part of your program. I wouldn't recommend that because um, live captions are not going to be 100% accurate. And what you end up with is then burnt in captions, open captions, that which may be difficult for your production workflow because then you have video where you have burnt in captions that may have some inaccuracies in. So I generally recommend that people separate the captions from the actual video, um, so that it gives people the option of viewing captions in any way that they want to, in an external web page, on their mobile phone, in an iframe embedded below the video. It gives them all those options. Plus, it doesn't burn in permanently into the video errors.
I think that's a great point that you made about the open versus closed captions. On PeerTube, is there any way to assign like we do in Zoom for this event where I assign the captioner, they get a link to send their captions to. Is there any way to do that with PeerTube so it's not burnt into the video?
No, not yet. They don't have a URL yet to provide to a cart service provider in order to create live closed captions on the video player. But what's great about a commons-based open source project like PeerTube is that we could, for example, fundraise in order to make that happen, and fundraise and create what's called a bounty, so that a web developer who's interested in that particular feature will have enough, will be able to be compensated for that if it's not something that they want to do voluntarily. And that could be built and merged into the project and then benefit all of us.
That's great. Thank you. And what would you suggest to an organization that is currently live streaming weekly events and recording them using Boxcast or YouTube in addition to Facebook Live to transition to the resources you have shared?
Yeah, so Boxcast, I believe it's similar to OBS Studio, and I believe it's software, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think the transition would actually be easy because you have the hardware, which is the You probably have the video camera, maybe the video switcher hardware, and all of that can be connected into OBS Studio. And OBS Studio is responsible for broadcasting your program. And instead of sending your program to YouTube or Facebook, you could just send it to, for example, a PeerTube instance that you join for free. Or if you wanted to hire a web developer who could create a private server instance of PeerTube for you, that could be done as well. All of that would be probably less expensive, like hiring a web developer to deploy a PeerTube instance for you is still less expensive than, for example, joining, say, Vimeo Enterprise or using one of those platforms like that.
Thank you. And is Jitsi Meet as accessible as Zoom in terms of pinning several sign language interpreters, showing them in a separate window, etc.? Or in other terms, what is the most accessible webinar tool you know?
Oh, that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that Zoom does have more features in terms of pinning. And but again, one of the benefits of us as a community investing, I'm at the same time, I don't want to kind of give the impression that we should only use open source software. I think there's very important balances to strike, and ultimately, it's a great conversation to know what your priorities are. And in many cases, using Zoom is the right choice, depending on what your values and priorities are. One of the benefits, however, of open source software is that we can be active participants in shaping the future of these softwares so that they serve the needs of our community, of the disability community. And we can participate, for example, in fundraising or in Q&A, meaning, finding issues and debugging, or writing documentation, all kinds of other ways we can participate in these open source projects and really shape them to meet our needs. And that's something that we don't have a lot of agency over when it comes to these commercial products like Zoom, because we're not the managers of that. And a lot of the features that we need for our disability community are not features that help those corporations' bottom line. And ultimately, those corporations are responsible for their bottom line. And so for us as a community, I think the values of open source software matches our general values as a community.
Thank you. And we're getting close to the top of the hour, but as we get to the end of the presentation, I just want to thank you again for sharing your knowledge with us. And it was, from my perspective, I do a lot of the webinars and events for IAAP, so I was familiar with some of the programs that you shared, but not others. So I thought the demonstration was very, very valuable, and it spoke to me a lot. So once again, thank you, Vijay. And I also want to thank our ASL interpreters, Beth and Lizzie, for their lovely work as always, as well as our captioner, Julia. And for upcoming IAAP webinars, we have on June 4th, AI Revolution, Enhancing Accessibility Through Innovative Solutions, and that is part of our digital accessibility series. Another webinar coming up in our digital accessibility series on July 17th is a practical approach to increasing and sustaining accessibility maturity. And then on August 7th, we have another subject matter expert webinar, Batteries Included Accessibility, a Pragmatic Guide to Get Started Today. And for any who are not yet a member of IAAP, we welcome you to join our network of over 6,500 accessibility professionals in over 100 countries. All IAAP members get complimentary access to live professional education webinars, as well as our library of archived webinars, access to our Connections networking platform, free courses, and more. And anyone who's interested can sign up at www.accessibilityassociation.org or email info@accessibilityassociation.org to see how you can become an IAAP member today. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.